My guest today is Alastair Campbell. Alastair was the press secretary to Tony Blair and also a campaign director for one of Tony Blair's victories in 2005 as the Prime Minister of Great Britain. He's also an author, a journalist, a mental health activist, a broadcaster, and he's my guest today all the way from London. Alastair, thank you very much for joining us.
My pleasure.
It has looked quite chaotic in the UK. For a first world country, your policies do seem to have swung about a bit from, lockdowns and strict approaches to COVID-19 through to, right, we've had enough and we're just going to have to live with it, and people are going to die and they are going to get sick. What's the politics of COVID in the UK? Are the population agreeing with the approach of Johnson, or are they up in arms about it?
It's very, very mixed. It's kind of hard to give a very simple answer to that. I think that there's a sense almost of being kind of becalmed about it. If I track back to the start of the pandemic, Johnson's handling at the start was utterly catastrophic. He refused to take it seriously. He missed the first 5 emergency meetings about it because he was having a couple of holidays, or he may have been finishing a book. Nobody seems to know. He endlessly said we would be the country that would stand up against this without sort of shutting ourselves down. He saw it as his kind of great Churchill moment, I'll beat the pandemic without shutting the country down. And then, of course, he got step by step, realising this was more serious than he'd thought. Then he said we're going to send it packing in 12 weeks. Then we went into a lockdown. Then we came out of that and into another one. And you're right, it's been a story of mixed messaging, incredible ministerial incompetence, which is honestly mind-blowing, some of the stuff these guys have done. We've seen an introduction into our government contracting that, frankly, the word that's used here by our media is cronyism. If it was any other country in the world, they'd call it corruption, where, people who are donors and friends of the Tories are getting the big contracts, including people who seem to have no qualifications for massive contracts that they've landed. So it's very hard for me to give you an answer, because I think what's happened to our country in recent years, I'm afraid, as you know, I'm obsessed with Brexit and think it's a complete disaster for the country. But the forces that led to Brexit and the forces that led to Johnson now being Prime Minister, it's almost like we've become a country that doesn't kind of debate things according to what's actually happening in the world. It's become this weird post-truth, post-shame, post-responsibility. They literally have no shame, these people. They do the most extraordinary stuff, and it's become so normalised, they don't even get asked if they're going to resign when they completely screw up pretty much everything that they do.
But when you say, Alastair, becalmed, it makes me think that perhaps there's been so much going on in Britain in the last 4 or 5 years with Brexit, and then the inability to actually bring a Brexit agreement to the table, and constant elections and changes of Prime Minister, and then Brexit happens and the agreements are signed and actually exits, and then COVID. Maybe the British public just want to rest from everything, and they want to break from it all and think, I'm just not going to take any interest in civil society. I'm just going to take care of myself, my family and my community, and switch off.
There's a lot of that around. There's no doubt about that. You've got a section of the population who is utterly kind of obsessed about what's happening in the country politically and economically and geopolitically and all the rest of it. I was talking to a friend the other day, he's kind of guy a bit older than me, and he said, I know men are meant to think about sex every 6 seconds. I think about Brexit every 6 seconds and the damage it's doing to the country. And my wife knows what I'm thinking about it. So you've got that sort of person.
Oh dear.
And then over here, definitely, you've got a lot of people who just think, there's nothing I can do. I feel helpless. There's nothing I can do. This government looks like they're going to be in for a while. I think the Prime Minister's a liar. I think the Cabinet's useless. I don't think Labour are holding them to account properly. I think the media's become a bit of a joke. But what do I do? There's a lot of that around the place as well. And that, I think, is dangerous. I really think it's dangerous that we're now in this state where people look at our politics almost like it's either a kind of bit of a horror movie or a bit, bit sort of entertainment. And of course, Johnson plays into that. In a way, that's how he became Prime Minister.
So is turning to Brexit, is Brexit now settling down from an economic point of view? And a lot of Australians have Irish heritage. About 50% of Australians have some kind of Irish descent. What's going to happen with the Northern Ireland question, or is that just all settled? Or are there going to be continuing problems with how Northern Ireland fits in to the UK because of Brexit?
Well, it's not settled by any manner of means. And, I think that, look, we've talked about this before. I am a passionate opponent of Brexit. I wish I'd got more involved in the referendum campaign because, like everybody else, I just thought, well, Remain's probably going to win. Since then, got involved in the campaign to try and get a second referendum on the outcome of the negotiations. We lost that. Johnson's now Prime Minister. It's very hard to see the fundamental issue about whether we rejoin or not, hard to see that being revisited in the short to medium term. But here's the other weird thing that's happening in our country, and part of this is to do with this kind of really weird symbiotic relationship between most of our media and a Tory government. There is so much going wrong with Brexit that, again, barely gets debated, barely gets covered. And of course, the Labour Party, they backed the deal in the end. They don't really want to talk about Brexit. So it's like we've got this gigantic elephant in the room. Just to give you a few stuff, you mentioned Northern Ireland. And that's a specific case where Johnson said there would be no border in the Irish Sea. There is a border. He agreed to it. That has had really serious implications for the constitutional arrangements and also for the economic fallout, if you like. That is carrying on. That has yet to be resolved. But then we've got situations like, and of course they want everybody to think this is all down to do with COVID. But we've got farmers and fishermen, who many of whom back Brexit, who now say they are being destroyed, literally wiped out. We've got fruit that's rotting. We had a thing the other day about thousands of pigs that are having to be slaughtered because we don't have the EU workers who used to be in the abattoirs. They've now gone. We've got the new code in our media is supply chain issues. Just Google empty shelves in British supermarkets and see what comes up. So it's all happening. And what the government says, well, it's nothing to do with Brexit, it's to do with the global economy, it's to do with COVID, it's to do with this, that and the other. So I think the Brexit debate is far from settled down. What has happened is that Johnson won an election on the slogan, get Brexit done. And a bit as like you were saying with COVID, people just fed up with it. It's a little bit like that for a lot of people with Brexit. Well, I may not like it, but honestly, God almighty, we've just got to kind of, do our best. So no, it's not settled, and I think it's a total disaster. And and they're trumpeting these trade deals. I mean, there's the one with Australia, which kind of was at least a kind of reasonably, serious sort of piece of work. Most of these trade deals that they're done, they're just rollovers from what we had with the European Union. Then we're making deals with other countries that are worse than what we had when we were inside the European Union, and they trumpet them as these fantastic triumphs.